Hi, my name's Pharaoh, and today I'm going to continue my sequence of Corvettes for beginners. And if you remember, this is very much focused on very early gameplay. So it's kind of aimed at two different things. It's aimed at players who are wanting to get a Corvette early on and want to know why they want to bother doing that. But it's also aimed at thinking about what actually changes in the game when we actually get a Corvette reasonably early in a save. So in this particular save, I have only just got to the anomaly, and I think I've got two systems when I start. I go to a third system, but more on that during the video. There will be a couple of other videos in this series, at least one more, because I'm about to release this one and the other one quite close together. The other one will be on storage and a little bit on cooking, because there are another couple of things we can build in Corvette. This one, we're very much going to focus on what we can scan. Now, I have already touched on scanning from Corvettes because we used in the very first episode the scanner to find our scrap that we could then build our Corvette from. And we've also looked at very quickly getting gold and silver, which you can get on planets by scanning. But we're going to start as if from scratch on getting the resources and getting the plants that you might find on a particular planet. And also we're going to look at the stars. There are specific resources that have stars, so 1-star, 2-star and 3-star on different planets. We won't go into all of those, but we're going to look at how you can get those and why you might want to early in a save. And I'm also going to, in passing, touch on the industrial mining. So, for instance, looking for hotspots on planets, which again is something that is very easy to get on a Corvette. That's not necessarily something you would do if you were a brand new player to the game, but if you were coming into the game wanting to just start a save and exploit your Corvette to the maximum, you might decide to do mining. So I'm going to touch on that as well, because it is something you can do with a Corvette very early on. So let's get started and focus on scanning in our Corvettes. So the first thing I want to look at is how we get the various resources from each planet. Now, we've actually come to this planet and I'm currently flying through it. It's terrible weather, so I'm not scanning at the moment. But we can get silver, dioxide and copper, and we can get frost crystals. Now, all of these things will show up on the scanner if we're scanning from either inside our ship or through the window or on top of the ship. So if we go to maintain current flight path, just like we did before, scan around for resources. These are the diamond shapes, and that's the silver. That's the dioxide. That's also silver. Find it easier to look backwards. There's the copper. So that's silver, dioxide and copper. They're the three main resources we're going to find on this planet. So that just leaves the frost crystals. So we're looking for the plant, which is frostwort. These are sometimes easier to just look for from above. You can see certain plants glow, like there's a lot of sodium just there, which could be handy early save. But in this case, we'll be looking for frost crystal. It looks like this planet has sparse frost crystals. It's not every few meters like you sometimes see on planets. And if we are having difficulty just spotting them flying over at night, then the easiest way, there's some actually, you can see they're just glowing green. So that I would suggest is actually easier. But if for some reason we were having difficulty spotting them, then again, we can scan them on foot. So as I was saying, we would look for the little plant symbol. And in this case, it's saying frostwort, which is the name of the plant that frost crystals come from. And so we've found the frost crystals, we've found the silver, we've found the dioxide, we've found the copper, all relatively quickly. Now, the other thing that we might want to do, but not necessarily very, very early game, would be to industrially mine some of those things. So, for instance, We might want to put an industrial mine on a silver deposit because that's a way of making money. It's not something I necessarily suggest. I don't think money is actually that important in the game, even though many people do see it that way. But if we did want to start industrial mining for any reason, and there are some other resources you might want to industrially mine, like for instance oxygen. Let's see, what else could you get that you wouldn't normally be able to get? There are some of the gases you wouldn't necessarily be able to get easily. Some of the activated metals you might not want to be mining all the time because you have to go to stormy planets to do that. So we would need to get some buried technology module and buy the actual parts in the anomaly. And I'm not going to go detailed into that because there are lots of guides about how we can use industrial mining in No Man's Sky. But I will quickly show you how we would actually go about getting the technology to allow us to scan for the hotspots that you need. And I will quickly show you how we would actually find those hotspots. So here we are back at the anomaly. One of the things I do mention in a short video is that we can now jump from our Corvettes, which can make it a little bit quicker to fly around. If you've got like a really good backpack from a mature save, you can get all the way across the anomaly just by jumping from your Corvette. So here we are at the back of the anomaly, and what I'm looking for is the tool that allows us to look for hotspots. So we come to this multi-tool guy, research multi-tool upgrades, and we want the survey device. Now, this is given to us as part of the storyline. In this save, the whole setup was that I immediately got a Corvette, so I haven't actually got this device yet, and I haven't run through any of the storyline. I just went to the anomaly and then immediately started. So I haven't got it, and it's going to cost me 320 nanites. But luckily, I do have quite a few nanites built up in this save. So let's grab that. Now, if you don't have nanites set up, my recommendation is scanning all of the fauna on a planet. But that's a side issue. So survey device, we're going to need a magnetic resonator, quantum computer, and wiring loop. Now, these are not things that we can easily build early on. In here we can buy the recipes, so there's the magnetic resonator, for example, but we can also buy these, and I'm going to show that we can buy them because it would be a lot cheaper early on in the save if we didn't have this very high number of nanites that I have. Hi, I'm going to cut in here because I was searching for quite a long while to try and find these parts. The magnetic resonator was the thing that I wasn't able to find. What I'm trying to do here with this Corvettes for Beginners sequence is try and make it realistic for how you can find the parts you need and build a Corvette and make use of it in very early saves. And in this save, I have only been to the very starter system and the second system where you have to warp to in order to get to the anomaly. And I wasn't able to find the magnetic resonators in either of those two systems. I went to the trade stations in the space station, and I went to the traders in the space station, and I looked for quite a long while. So I've cut all of that footage out. Obviously, that's a bit irrelevant. So I decided to warp to another system. So I've now got 3 systems in my list. So we're now in a third system, and I pick up the magnetic resonators, and then we head off to a planet in order to demonstrate how we can scan for hotspots. So we'll pick up there. Being realistic, even looking for hotspots is fast tracking, because usually we don't have the technology early on to do industrial mining. We'd need to get plenty of parts for that from the anomaly. But if we wanted to go that route, we would be able to this way. So back up on the roof. I can now do a scan, and I can look for minerals or power or gases. So let's look for power first. Very often building a base with power is a nice thing to start with. And so we can find an electric power hotspot, C-class. Oh, this might get me caught here. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's going to somehow go through. Oh, it's just going to phase through. Fair enough. Right, so carry on. We'd like to look maybe for a better one. There's no hotspot here. And normally if there was no hotspot, we'd be jumping back in our ship, or we'd be traveling a long way on foot looking for a hotspot. But here we can just lazily wait until there's another one pops up. So there's an S-class. So I'm just going to jump off of my ship, skydive down. And the reason I'm doing that is just that's the quickest way to stop my ship. I could jump in the cockpit and stop, or turn around. But if I jump off of my ship, let's go back to roughly where my ship was, then it's a lot quicker. So which way was I facing? I was facing that way. So I should be able to get the hotspot if I go this way. As we saw it while we were flying in the opposite direction. There, so the electric hotspot. And it's in this direction somewhere. Oh, I almost had it then. There we go. So now we've located an S-class electric hotspot. Now again, we're not likely to utilize mining this early on in our save, but if we wanted to shortcut the game a little bit, then we would have to go searching for buried technology modules, and then we could spend those in the anomaly at the construction terminal and get the industrial mining parts. So just to show you where you would get these mining resources from, we come to the construction research station and we tab along to the industrial modules. Then if we're spending some salvage data, which obviously we can get on planets, we can get mineral extractors, which help with those mineral deposits. We can get gas extractors, which help with the gas ones. Supply depots, which allow us to store up a large amount of them, and supply pipes, which allow us to connect them all together. And as you can get the hint here, this is quite an involved project that most newer players don't do for a little while. The other thing we can get are the electromagnetic generators. One of the things I do in my saves is I set up bases at an electric hotspot where I can then put a teleporter for planets that I'm interested in coming back to. So that way I don't have to set up any other form of electrics. I don't have to recharge my teleporter. When I arrive there, I can just teleport to it, do whatever I want there, and then teleport away again without having to worry about anything. It is worth noting, if you're new to the game, you don't need a teleporter in order to teleport to a base. You just need a base computer. So if you're prepared to fly up to the anomaly or fly to the space station, you don't necessarily need to worry about teleporters early on. So far we've covered finding the various resources, finding the frost crystals or whatever the particular plant is for that biome. And what we haven't done is the other things that you can find. Obviously, I have shown that we can look for buried technology modules, but you can see a lot of other things coming up. There's some damaged machinery there. There's some hazardous flora. We can even see there's some fauna here because we're not too high and we've stood still for a little while, and some of the fauna has started to spawn in. So you can use the exosuit scanner while on a ship for quite a lot of different things. Subterranean relic, for instance. We were looking for caves. Even if we don't want to grab the subterranean relic, which is a reasonably low value item early game that we could stock up on and sell. But that also indicates that there are caves there. So that would be a good source of, say, cobalt. And that's the various other types of plants. For instance, pulpy roots is something that we could eat or cook with. Same with frozen tubers. These are all the basic things. But the other things we might want to look for are these star items. Let's see if we can find some just to show you what I mean. These are rarer, but not that hard to find with a Corvette. And let's pick a direction that's not got too many obstacles. That'll do. Right, so let's go forward slowly. Maintain our course. And we're just looking for icons with a star on them. They're usually yellow or orange yellow. There's our hotspot that we found earlier. Now, as I say, these are going to be rarer and they're going to be more common on some planets than others. But there's always going to be... There's one. There's a 2-star there. So that is floating crystal. I'm going to go and get those. Now here we are at the floating crystals. Now I've taken my advanced mining laser out. You will have usually got the advanced mining laser by now because you've already been to the anomaly. You've completed the first part of the tutorial. But if for some reason you haven't built an advanced mining laser, for these kinds of things you do need it. I've taken it out just to demonstrate that. Let's put it back in again. And these can be very useful resources because, well, I'll show you. We get glowing minerals from them. You can see up on my compass where the various ones are, so we can keep looking around to make sure we've got them all. So I've given myself a completely empty inventory and I walked far enough away from my ship that things won't go into there. I just didn't want things to go into existing stacks, so we can see what we get from these 14 glowing minerals. So analyze them all in one go. And see what we've got. So we've got some uranium, which we've already demonstrated we can break down into silver in a previous video. And dirty bronze is one of those things we can break down. Crystal sulfide we can use for underwater building, and we can use for things like the Nautilon exocraft later on in the game. Iridesite, early on we can definitely sell that. Later on we might use that in crafting. Geodesite, again, exactly the same, but the other side of the crafting tree, but something that we can use to sell early game because we get quite a bit of money for that. As you can see, the total value 450,000 and 300,000. Tritium hyperclusters, which we can break up to tritium to feed our pulse drive. Herox, which we can also break down in a refiner early game, or again can be used in crafting. I would say early on it's probably better to break down just like uranium and dirty bronze. And gold nuggets, which you can analyze for gold. We've already shown that silver and gold can be useful for generating plenty of chromatic metal or generating lots of copper or other solar metals as we progress in the game. So got a bit of money here, and I'm going to go and sell these immediately because we were running a bit low, and now we've demonstrated one way of making money. So I'm going to sell the dirty bronze. I'll probably sell this crystal sulfide because there are ways of getting that, and money is sometimes more important early on, despite what I said about money earlier. Uranium. That will sell the Herox, we'll sell the Geodesite, and we'll sell the Iridesite. We'll keep the gold and the tritium. So now we have just over 1 million, which we've returned to. We did spend a lot of money, we've got it a bit back. So as you can see, just by using our Corvette to scan for those 2-star things on that particular planet, we made quite a bit of cash. Now, you won't always make exactly that amount of cash. You might make more, you might make less. There were quite a few crystals there, so that was a lucky haul, but we could just do that for 20 minutes and get lots. And let's have a look at the other stars, and also bear in mind that a 2-star resource will be different on some planets to others. So maybe we'll go to a different planet to continue our search. One thing you could do if you wanted to use this as a method of getting cash or getting specific types of resources is make a note where you were when you found the particular thing. So on this particular planet that I'm looking at now, Azantane Isoma, I found the floating crystals. Oh, there's another thing. I was going to show this if we found one. We can find unknown graves. That's going to be a lot rarer. But finding unknown graves does shortcut the system quite a lot. So if you do spot them while you're looking for other things, they're definitely worth grabbing, because these give us glyphs which we can use for the portal network. So even if you're not even sure what the portal network is yet, if you see an unknown grave, I would definitely recommend coming to one. And we get a little bit of a story about how this person died, and their hologram is speaking to us. As you can see, I've got a glyph, and I've actually got 2 glyphs so far, because I've come across these, which I really wouldn't normally have done this early in a save. And the only reason I've come across them is because I've got a Corvette and I'm scanning for things and I'm spotting them as I'm flying around. So again, this can shortcut the game quite considerably. If you really don't want to complete all of the storyline and just want to get to the portal glyphs early on, this can be a reasonably quickly way of slowly building up those glyphs. This is just an ordinary isotopic planet, so it's going to be radioactive. It's going to have gamma root. It's also got ancient bones, which is one of the other things that we could collect for cash. And again, we could search for them this way if we wanted to. On some planets, ancient bones will be all over the place. You won't have to really use a Corvette to go from point to point. On other planets, they can be quite rare, so running around can be a little bit too slow. Maybe use an exocraft or use this method that we're using today. So let's get back on our another grave. See how quickly we're finding graves? That's lucky, but also definitely going to grab that. The Fallen Traveller's Grave is marked by a glyph, an epitaph of some ancient technology. Now, not only does that give us the option to go to various places in the galaxy, we also get memory fragments, and these can give us technologies. So this one gave us prepackaged rocket boots. Controversial items. Some people love them, some people hate them. I hate them. I'm not going to use them. And a hyperdrive module, which we can put in our ship. So I will be doing that when we get back to the ship. So we can go a bit further, an extra 75 light years. Not to be sniffed at considering we got it for free. So nice and slowly does it. It's always a little bit faster than it appears when we get out of our cockpit. We suddenly seem to be going a bit faster than it feels like when we're on a ship. I think it's just an illusion. Just because of the different scales. There's our fossil beds. But if we were looking for bones and they weren't immediately evident, then we could go to these and pick up our bones this way. You can see we're getting quite a few, so This is possibly the type of planet where an exocraft would be equally good for finding fossils. But we're certainly finding them relatively quickly here, and some of these bones can be worth an awful lot of money. There's a star item. Oops. Mutant plant. Now, mutant plants, depends what type of mutant plant it is. Let's go and see. So 1-star items are often not as nice to find as 2 or 3-star items. Stay away from this localized storm. So this is the mutant plant on this planet. Let's make sure we've got the mining beam. Yep. It's rolling away from me. And we got some radon from it. Another one here. We've got some radon from that. Quite a bit of radon. That's not to be sniffed at. There's another star here. It's a little bit close to that storm, so I'm going to be a bit careful. Oh, look, my marker that I placed is almost exactly where it was. Where's the star gone? Oh, here it is. Now, these kinds of gases, they have this kind of gas cloud icon. These are generally used in crafting. They're not something that you would often have much use for early on, but it's something you could always squirrel away for later if you didn't want to sell it. So that's that 1-star item on this particular planet. I could potentially, again, change my planet name to mutant plant if I wanted to come back and look for them. There's so much to this game that I don't want to completely confuse us with what all of these things are, because they reveal themselves later on in the game. They're not necessarily things we would be looking for. I think there was a... We just missed a 2-star. Let me just turn around. Try and turn around exactly. Go backwards from where we are. So... we were on that navigation marker, so that gives us a direction to head. There's a 2-star. Floating crystals, I think it was. As you can see, they're not as easy to spot from a distance, and they're harder to scan because of it. And as you can see, this is a much more realistic number of floating crystals. Exactly 1. We've gone from one extreme to another. Oops. Yeah, another localized storm. We get exactly 1 glowing mineral from that. And this time we get some more tritium, which is useful, as we said before. And it felt like there were more of them on the other planet. These things can be more scarce or more common, depending on the planet we're on. What we haven't seen is any 3-stars yet. I think in passing I spotted a 3-star on the other planet, so we can always go back there. So we've actually got buildings also popping up. That not all buildings will pop up. That one was an ancient plaque. So some things do pop up and some things don't. Sometimes it's better to scan for things from your cockpit for points of interest. But again, some things will pop up and some things won't. So you can get different things with different methods. That's gamma weed. That's where we get the gamma root from on this particular planet. There's some more 2-star. So more floating crystals, which we could use to get some resources or cash. I'd really like to see a 3-star if there is one. Oh, there's a 3-star. So they're metal fingers. Metal fingers are one of the 3-star resources that are definitely worth finding. As you can see, we get uranium. And the other thing we get is gold. Both of them are very useful. Uranium is very useful, so we don't have to keep making launch fuel, because you can use it instead of launch fuel. And gold is useful, as we've said before. Silver and gold can be used in the metal loop if we want to make some chromatic metal, or if we want to make some copper. If we've got a little bit of copper, see my previous video on that in this series. And we have got 433 gold, and we've got 955 uranium. Nice little haul just for floating around in our Corvette. I'll leave you to discover what the other ones are on different planets, because each 3-star deposit on a planet will be unique to that planet. So the 3 stars on this planet will always be metal fingers. So let's leave this beautiful planet, and just for the last part of the video, we'll try one more planet. So this says activated copper, so this is going to be more stormy. So my pulse engine has gone down, but one of the things that we picked up a lot of so far is tritium, because we had those tritium hyperclusters from our glowing crystals. Now I'm going to be a little bit more cautious, because you're not always totally safe from storms, or nice floating islands though. You're not always totally safe from storms in a Corvette. So I'm not going to go anywhere near my hatch. I think just in case, for instance, there are tornadoes here. I've had problems with those in the past in other saves while standing on my Corvette. So we'll just be a bit careful. Oh, there was a 3-star there. There it is. And that is a curious deposit. Now, this is a slightly awkward spot for a curious deposit cluster, but it's a nice large one. You'll see why in a second. Let's go down the hill a bit. When I shoot them, they start rolling. And they can roll away from you quite quickly. Some people will make buildings around these to stop them rolling away. And as you can see, we get runaway mold from these in quite large quantities in normal mode. This is a really inconvenient place for them. So I'm not going to mine all of those. But suffice to say that a lot of people would mine all of those quite quickly, because runaway mold turns into nanites. So let's go back to our large refiner. Another really good thing about... Actually, let me shut that hatch just in case there are tornadoes here. Another good thing about the Corvette is that we always have access to our refiner. We shove runaway mold in. 5 to 1 turns into nanites. So those 852, and that was just 2 curious deposits, we get 170 nanites. So again, you can see the benefits of being able to scan for these things using our Corvette. Now, some people like to fully exploit these because they do respawn quite frequently. So they put bases there, or they fly away and come back over and over again and get thousands and thousands of runaway mold. That works really well in normal mode if you want to just farm them for nanites. Doesn't work so well in higher modes because it's much slower. As you can see, it's very slow to do it, and we have smaller stack sizes in higher settings, depending on what stack size we choose in our settings. But again, a very good reason to have a Corvette if you want to exploit those. So we've found the 3-star on here, and we could definitely mark that as curious deposit. fly over this. It's not the most convenient place to go searching with these high mountains, but let's see if we can find the 2-star or maybe even a 1-star. Now, I'm not going to do every single type of planet and every single star, but as you can see, these things are valuable and they can crop up reasonably easily using a Corvette. You just have to have a bit of patience. Whereas if we were on foot, it would take a lot longer. If we were just driving around using an exocraft, we might have to do a lot more searching, jumping out of our exocraft and scanning, etc. I'm going to go straight through this or bang into it. Let's see what happens. It's a lovely floating island, though. Oh, it sent us off in a different direction. And now I've fallen off of my ship. So yeah, maybe be a little bit careful of floating islands. So let's pick a course that we know is going to avoid floating islands. Let's just go through that gap there. So we avoid the tall firestorms on this planet. Alright, so this should be a safer course. Now there's a 1-star. Was that Metal Fingers? Oh, it's an ancient data structure. Now, I would normally go down and get that. I'm not sure about this storm at the moment. Let's take a risk, because it's normal. I mean, if I die, I can always get my grave back. Navigation data, which we discussed before, is handy for calling in your ship. Not so handy for Corvettes, but we can also use navigation data to swap for charts. So again, a nice little haul. So that's a representative sample of the different stars we can find and what we can get from them. There are a few more. I'll leave it for you to discover them all. We found the most valuable, the curious deposits and the floating crystals and the metal fingers. They're the ones that I would definitely always be on the lookout for early on. But there are others out there if you want to look for them. And it's relatively easy to do so on a Corvette. So to recap, we can find the resources on a planet very easily. These 3 resources, the magnetized ferrite, the paraffinium and the activated copper, we could just search for as we fly along. And the star bulb, equally, we could do that. Although we could just look for them at night time. They can be easy to spot that way. We saw that we could look for bones. There are lots of other markers. We saw things like underground resources that we could then find caves. We found the different stars for things like curious deposits and metal fingers. These are all valuable things that we can easily find using this particular system. And then, of course, we also did the basics of scanning. We were able to look for power hotspot, and we demonstrated that, which we could use to set up our first base without having to worry too much about power if we got the right parts from the anomaly. Or we could look for minerals or gases that we could mine. If we wanted to shortcut and go straight to industrial mining early on in a save, then we can use the Corvette to find those hotspots really quite easily. So that's scanning and all the different things we can scan for in our Corvette. And the next video I'm going to make will be specifically on how we can best utilize the storage available in a Corvette, because there's a little bit more to say than I've already said before in previous episodes. And also we're going to go a little bit more deeply into cooking. Not too deeply, but just a couple of examples of how we can make use of cooking. So until then, I've been Pharaoh, travel well, and goodbye for now.